So, hello, my name is Oana Juncu, and I'm coming from France, if that matters. And I like to call myself being an agile business DJ that mixes whatever practices make people proud of the products they build. So my talk today is about how to make brave decisions to build great products that initially was called the cost of fear, because fear is an impediment to create great products and take decisions. You know, that's why my title is a little bit blurred. Fear blurs us. So why is fear important? Because we won't become brave until we acknowledge our own fears. I even will say that the moment we face our fears is the first moment that we are brave. Having said that, let's step a little bit into our fears. Because we have our fears, individuals have unconscious behaviors to prevent ourselves as individuals that are triggered by fears. Organizations, teams and groups have also collective behaviors that are triggered by collective fears. So an organization is also a living organism. Now, having said that, let's step back and try to get rid of the complex of the fear as being something bad. Because fear is good for life. Fear is good. Fear keeps us alive. So that's the first thing. No complex. Be thankful of your fears. Now, let's see a little bit how our brain that answers fast to fear, because fear is the most priority feeling we have. So, brain responds first to danger, fear. Then the next priority are emotions, because emotions are linked to our unaddressed needs. And the last priority is our conceptual rational thinking, the slowest part of our brain. So if I can present you a model of the brain. Say this, my hand is a brain. So the fastest brain is here, the reptilian brain. Then if my thumb is the limbic brain, emotions are triggered by limbic brain. And then the neocortex, all our thinking, conceptual thinking. So what happens? If we have an unsolved need, the neocortex go away. We don't really think. Emotions, we are overflowed by our emotions, all type of emotions, good or bad. So we don't really think. And if there's a threat, then the most performant brain takes the driver's seat. So it's the reptilian brain. But remember that. If we really want to take conscience of our fears, we have to address them and then really take control of our fears. Okay. So, having said that, remember this model of the brain. I'm still in the brain topic. We love patterns because if we have patterns, we can decide faster and react to the threats in a faster way. So we do love, our brain do love patterns, creating patterns. And my next slide is to present you one pattern, because as our brain loves patterns, I love patterns and you love patterns. So let's see a pattern, UP. Maybe you know that pattern. It's the Kinevin model of reality, let's say, different systems. But I would like to present you this model from a threat perspective. So the Kinevin model have 4 parts, 4 quadrants, you know. The simple systems, the complicated system, the complex system, and chaotic systems. Credits to Dave Snowden, of course. Now, we love to operate in a low threatening environment. And that's why simple systems and complicated systems are a low perception have a low perception of danger, because they are predictable. Wow. If they are predictable, we can deal with danger and with fear. Now, when that exists in place, nevertheless, there's no thriving around. What is a simple system? Very quickly. The simple system is that system when data is self-relevant, obvious. There's nothing to explain. Best practices are there, by the way. The only simple systems have best practices. So we're doing the same things over and over. We'll never be great. We won't build great products in a simple system. We have our best practices. That doesn't mean that they're not helpful. Complicated systems are also predictable systems. So data is not obvious, but we can have algorithms and process and rules. So we know that with a given input, we have a given a predictable output. In complicated systems, we might need experts to perform, to see how the algorithms are. But yeah, we have good practices in a complicated system. Nevertheless, the chance to become great when you know the input and there's a predictable output, the chances to become great, I'd say, are low. No surprise, no thriving. On the left side, I said the threat level perception gets higher because on the left side, starting on complex systems are unpredictable systems. Those systems, when you put an input, you're not certain of the output. How freaking is that? I'll never be sure of anything in life. Oh my God. Nevertheless, this is a very interesting spot, because this is also the way that we and our brain operates. Actually, we evolve in a complex world where we do always pattern searching. We search for new patterns, new patterns, new patterns. It's a place of emergent practices. And by the way, the way we act there is probe, we experience something, we sense what is the answer of the system, and then respond. All the cycles that you know in design thinking, in lean thinking, damming, you know, explore, build, feedback, all this are practices to deal with complex systems. lean startup loop, if you know it, build, test, learn, is a practice for complex systems. So pattern searching. So now it comes to something interesting. We might be great because we are always discovering something. Nevertheless, as the threat level is high, we do love to push complex system in simple and complicated ones. Our tendency is to lower the level of threat. So we might take the emergent practices as good practices or best practices and stick complex systems in simple or complicated. That's why a lot of enterprises just operates on processes that are not adapted. Okay, and now the gentle warning. We love patterns, as I said, but new patterns lead to new cognitive biases, just because we like to install those practices in systems that we want to make simple. Cognitive biases and what I call the survival scenarios. Survival scenarios are those scenarios that we learn when we have learned something from a threat, and then we put in place practices to preserve ourselves. The survival scenarios are those unconscious behaviors that our brain apply to avoid the dangerous, threatening situation. Because, hey, give me a break. Always have high tension. So we put in place the scenarios to preserve the status quo, because we know it. And as I was mentioning on my first slide, or the second, individuals put in place survival scenarios. Why survival? Why is it that dramatic? Because when we meet a threat, you know, our brain responds in the same way as if you are to be eaten. So today, you won't be eaten. So there's no threat that you'll get attacked by a lion in the street. But if your colleague, your boss, or your client is asking something for you that is dangerous, your brain, mind brain, reacts like being threatened to be eaten. The reaction is the same. And as organizations and teams, we have also our own survival scenarios, preserving the status quo. Remember all those meetings of checking, validating, going through processes, risk management? Any ring? Any bell ring? All these, you can consider them as survival scenarios that preserves our organization to go and create value. We invest a lot of time in this preserving activities. I will give a workshop after tomorrow on this and all these scenarios and how to shift perspective on. But to go on with the presentation, the last and for me the most interesting quadrant of the Kinavin model is the chaos. In chaos is crisis management. There's no pattern that can be applied. It's something happens, catastrophe. And the way that we operate there is act. So first thing we act on the crisis. Then we sense what it has, and then we respond. What is called novel practices. And I don't know if you ever had experienced a such high-level threatening moment. But in that moment, I think, that's only my assumptions, but I think it's a very interesting state when we become fearless, because fear won't help anymore. We have to act. It's a way of de-double from your own self. I can share, I was thinking if I would share an example from my personal or my professional life. Maybe the personal one is simpler. There was some years ago, 2 years ago, one of my daughter disappeared. She's a teenager. Now she's 20, but she was 17 at that. She disappeared. We had to take a flight back from our holidays, and she didn't show up. She just didn't show up. So I said, there's something wrong in that moment. Something happened. She went to a party. I remember myself in that moment being so calm and reacting and looking on my own self. Actually, she didn't really disappear. The story is less dramatic than that. So she showed up afterwards. She fell asleep. But there was my 10 hours of hell. Nevertheless, in that moment, everything that I was acting, I kind of was looking at myself acting in a very calm way. So that was to share with you that the moment of highest level of threat are the moment that we might become fearless because we have to act. So I think this is something very interesting. How can we become in those fearless, high threatening moments of chaos, turn it into exploration and use this other model from Nassim Taleb, which is anti-fragile. Because in nature and living systems, when there's a catastrophe happening, the system gets out reinforced. So all the systems that grow from chaos, how we can just tip it into, this happened to me, and this is an opportunity. Shift perspective. Life is anti-fragile. Viruses, unfortunately for us. Another example that is from mythology, but it's the Hydra. More you behead her, more heads she has. Novel practices. How can we deal with this anti-fragile and our level of threat? How to become brave? I would like to introduce you the model of the U theory, how we can take decisions with the U theory. Well, when we want to take a decision to go from A to B, we remember simple systems would like to go from A to B in a linear way. Nevertheless, the true decision process and true transformation is a much deeper one. It goes down. You assess and acknowledge our fears. You can redirect the attention to something else. The reality is the same. Fear is a perception. Just shifted. And I remember the stories this morning were very inspirational about that. The situation is the same. You perceive the danger, shift the perspective. Letting go, very important, also very difficult. Letting go of your convictions and fears. And the tipping point, the bottom of the U, is be present. Be present. And also in chaotic, also the chaotic circumstances, actually we automatically, our brains know to become present. It would be a pity to have only very high threatening situations to become really present. So the invitation is to learn and train to be present all the time. Be present here and now. And what's the benefit of that? The benefit is to connect with our own authentic self. All the survival scenarios, survival of ourselves, our systems, all those things that we already do, always do, and we are not happy about, the status quo, actually stops us or don't let us connect to ourselves. We don't really know who we really are. So we can be present and get rid of those scenarios. We can connect to our own authenticity. If that happens, new things emerge, then the innovation come. Innovation will never be planned. I don't believe that innovation can be planned. We can hold a space for innovation, but can be let him come, crystallize the new emerging idea, and then prototype. So this is a theory U model, Otto Scharmer. So how we can do that? Going back to the brain. You understand I'm a brain fan. Our short memory deals with only 3 things. So to really learn something, just say 3 things, and then let that learning happen, then other 3 things. So I will say 3 things. The first thing to be brave is to create a shared purpose. And okay, you've already heard that. What is the shared purpose? That's something that is greater than ourselves. And I would like to mention here the overview effect. Anyone familiar with the overview effect? The overview effect is the effect that the astronauts have, the feeling that the astronauts have when they see the Earth. There is an instant connection to something greater than ourselves, seeing the Earth. And that idea of being part or operating for something that is greater than ourselves, most important than ourselves, makes us brave. And if you don't believe me like that, it sounds very conceptual. For those of you that have kids, or those of you that have other passions, just think for a moment. How brave are you? How important for you is to ensure them a wonderful future? For those of you that are part of association, organizations, how brave are you to be committed? So having a shared purpose is a way to become brave and embrace change. The second is nurture a place of psychological safety. So hold the space. There's, we talk a lot about failure. Failure is good. Okay, failure is good, but for our brain, failure is not good. Failure is a threat. So to make failure really a learning opportunity, that can happen only in a psychological safe place. What is psychological safety is that common shared belief that anyone can express an idea or a concern without being embarrassed, humiliated, or punished. Simple. I don't know, just reflect how psychological safety your place is, your workplace is. I'm pretty sure that there are psychological safety places. So this definition of psychological safety is to give credit to Amy Edmondson that made researches at Google to create. She's a psychologist. And the third is encourage diversity to make brave decisions. Encourage diversity, okay. That's also something I'd say, we've already heard that. Well, really, do you think that I really tell you just encourage diversity? What I would like to say is to encourage diversity of thoughts. Not diversity of gender, of religion, or diversity of thoughts. This is the most difficult inclusiveness to practice when someone doesn't agree with you and welcome that disagreement. Yeah, to do that, I will go quickly through it because I have only 5 minutes left. To encourage diversity is to create an organization where homeostasis happens. So homeostasis is a good balance through the elements. So nature, what nature, living organism need is water, fire, earth, and air. From our organization, there are people for whom emotions are important. So welcome in your organization people to whom emotions are important. And if you are something that is very action and entertainment driven, fire, how do you think we welcome people that are not operating, not action driven, but are emotion driven? You think that those people are too emotional. They don't deliver. Value and process, earth. There are some people that really need to see what their identity and have a process. If they don't have a process, they're not comfortable. How the others can perceive them as being psycho-rigid. So welcome those psycho-rigid people, psycho-rigid. They just need those values and clear rules to be displayed. And the air, it's inspiration and creativity. Those people that need gap time, slack times, just do nothing, and then ideas emerge. How are they perceived if we are not in an inclusive organization? They can be perceived as lazy, aren't they? So to conclude, create a space for brave decision and create great product, purpose, psychological safety, and diversity. And really to end, the only way to become brave is to empower yourself as an organization. We do have a choice, and empower yourself as a person. You do have a choice. Thank you very much. My name is Oana Juncu, and my presentation here was how to become brave to create great products.